You were mentioning Wolf Gupta. For those who are like sort of uninformed, what exactly is going on? Who is Wolf Gupta? And what's the situation over there?
What's happened is you've crossed the line. And you've crossed the line and you started telling lies and making false promises and stuff. And I think that's not okay. They've mastered the art of mis-selling. I think the reason they sued Pradeep and me is they felt they used this as a bullying, intimidatory tactic. They felt we would get scared, we would roll over and say, I'm very sorry, please forgive us.
Hey guys, welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today the guest that we have on the show is Dr. Aniruddha Malpani. He's an IVF specialist and he's also an angel investor, and he's here to talk about his experience of speaking out against a company called WhiteHat Jr., which is actually, its parent company is the most valuable edtech startup in the world, which is a company called Byju. So the first question I have for you, Aniruddha, is how did this even come to be in the first place? Why did you decide to start speaking out against WhiteHat Jr.?
I think that's such a great question. I mean, what business does an IVF doctor have to talk about this stuff? And, why would an angel investor do this? And typically, most people in the startup space, most investors are very careful about what they say. Because, at some point you want to get in bed with other VCs and, you refer deals to them, they refer deals to you. So it's not considered to be politically correct to say anything about anyone else. You can say it within the four walls of your house. You can say it after you've had a couple of drinks, but you don't want to say this publicly. And I guess that's the advantage of being an angel investor, that I can pretty much say what's on my mind. And the reason I became an angel investor is you want to leave the world in a better place than you found it. And at my age, it's unlikely that I'm going to start anything new. So I think of my role as being able to catalyze entrepreneurs who can make the world a better place. And I think that's gratifying and that's what can happen. And I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. That's the reason I sign checks. That's the reason I fund them. And I continue to fund them and I will continue to fund them. And that's why it actually breaks my heart when you see certain startups behave unethically or the incorrect way. And I think that creates a lot of mess for everyone else. For example, these are the guys who get all the press. So they're seen as the role models, which is then what everyone wants to do. So in one sense, they crowd out all the good guys because the impression seems to be is that profits come before purpose, which makes no sense to me at all. I have a soft corner for social impact entrepreneur. I think, the money will come, the money will go. You can't take it away with you after you're dead and gone. So what legacy do you want to leave behind? And I'm not trying to be morbid, and it's not like I think I'm going to kick the bucket tomorrow or anything else, but I think that's useful metric. So there are two kinds of CVs. One is your resume CV, which you put on LinkedIn, which I'm not on right now, and I will come back to that. But the resume CV is what you do when you're applying for a job. I think more important now, what I think of is your legacy CV. What do you want to be remembered for after your death? Star should be. And honestly, I was very happy when I first came across a lot of money being pumped into edutech startups. Because I think education is critical. That's the future for the next generation. You can impact so many more people. And technology allows you to amplify your reach and reach out to so much more. So that was great. These guys are doing so well. Not a space which I understood too much about. Like I said, I'm just a doctor. But over time, you start hearing all these horror stories, and quite a lot of them, and I'll come back to that. And I first came to hear about these horror stories when I was active on LinkedIn. And there was a lot of stuff about Byju, which is now the parent company of WhiteHat Jr. So multiple things, misleading ads, a lot of pressure, a lot of mis-selling. And the pressure is not just on the parents to buy the courses, but there's a lot of pressure on the sales guys. So they have a huge amount of churn, hire and fire policy. So they pick up young graduates, promise them the earth and the moon. If you meet these targets, no one reads the fine print when you get a job. And then once they've got the job and you make them work, you say you'll only get your salary when you meet these targets. Everything is very sales-driven, revenue-driven, profit-driven, which means the poor sales guy just cares about meeting his targets rather than what's happening to the parent and the child. And they teach them a particular script. So they just read out the script. And let's be honest, it's very easy to manipulate people. Just like doctors can manipulate patients into signing up for surgery. It's very easy for someone to manipulate a parent into saying, hey, you're not being a good parent. Your kid will get left behind. Your neighbor's kid is signed up, so you better do this. Schools are terrible because there's so many kids. Teachers are terrible. In one sense, they're deliberately bad-mouthing everyone else to kind of better they are. And, it's like I said, one story after another. And there was so much of this. So I started talking about it on LinkedIn. Wasn't very active on Twitter in those days. And then
when was this? When did you start sort of speaking up?
I think must be March of 2020. And, the post would be frank and forthright. And I've always felt, you need to say the truth. And I encourage my patients to tell me the truth. I said, if you tell me what's wrong, I can fix the problem. What's wrong? And you badmouth me behind my back, I'll never be able to improve. So I think of complaints as a gift. So I said, these guys, if you're pointing these out, why won't they do things? So just to give you an example, they would get lower income parents to sign up, but these are expensive courses for Byju's, and they would then go into educational debt because effectively they say, yeah, it's 70,000. I know you can't afford it. Let's sign you up for an EMI, which means we'll break it up. But, we will tie up with this particular financial intermediary. So the salesman's happy. He's got his targets met. The financial intermediary is happy. Byju's doesn't care because they booked the revenue, so they're out of it. And then it's the poor parent whose kid is signed up and who hates the classes, but has to continue paying for these on an ongoing basis. So they're angry, unhappy, and there's no redressal available because they make lots of promises when signing up. Then when you ask for a refund, the guy is just not available. So anyway, so I said all that, and very honestly, and actually I said, you have a toxic work culture. That's not the right thing because you have the ability to impact so many people. You're often the first job for so many people. It should be a healthy work culture because effectively what's happened is people are starting to assume if it's your first job, this is the way all jobs are. This is the way all managers treat their juniors. This is the way you're meant to cheat. So that's going to become mainstream. Imagine what's going to happen when these kids who are 25 when they join or 20 when they join Byju's are going to grow up and become the next set of. So it's like, one rotten apple keeps on spreading, just ongoing stuff. So very worrisome. So was vocal about this. So actually one of the Byju's investors reached out and said, why don't you talk to Byju? He's a good guy. So I said, sure, I'm happy to do that. I reached out to him. He said, yes, I think what you're saying is spot on because we've grown very rapidly. And why don't you talk to my HR person? Spoke to him. He said, yes. He actually publicly thanked me on LinkedIn, saying, thank you, Dr. Malpani, for pointing out the toxicity in our work culture. And I promise you we're going to improve. And I know it's not enough just to promise. You see how we walk our talk. So I said, great. And I said, you guys can actually be the leaders in the Indian startup ecosystem for making a healthy work culture. What managers should expect, what juniors should expect, stuff like that. I said, reinvent, that's a great image to have. Anyway, so none of that happened. And then LinkedIn started sending me love letters saying, we're going to pull down your posts. We're going to stop you from posting, stuff like that. So I said, I thought this was meant to be a free platform. This runs on user-generated content. If I'm saying something wrong, please tell me what I'm saying wrong. And the online reputation management for Byju's is like a well-oiled machine, just like their salespeople are. So the first thing is copyright strike. So they just use standard Digital Millennium Copyright Act, none of which applies. So then you have to argue that. Then they put it up. Then they sneakily turn down the algorithm in such a way that your posts no longer figure, all kinds of things happening. And then, so they said, we don't think that's. So I replied, I think this is why you should not be doing this. This is why. And then one fine day, they said, we're seeing a consistent pattern of posts which are critical about Byju's. We're deleting your account. I said, I think that's a little unfair. Every time you send me a warning, I've responded to the warning. I've asked you what I can do better. Don't do this. My LinkedIn account is valuable to me. I have 180,000 followers. The fact that I have so many followers means obviously people find value in what I'm saying. And at least give me a chance to be heard. No response. So ideally, people should have escalated it so that, this guy who sent me, they're saying, I forget, his name is Shien, and they've got some safety or whatever else his designation is, should have escalated it to his boss, got someone else to look at it. Effectively, no recourse. Then what do you do? So kind of that just went for a doom loop. And it's very hard actually to do anything much about these people. So we said, okay, fine. Can we take them to court? That's the only thing. So that's a completely new story. And I'm going to come back to that shortly again. But because I got kicked out of LinkedIn, but I get a lot of energy from social media platforms. The reality is I'm a bit of an introvert. And as a doctor, your major focus is seeing patients, seeing them one-on-one. You don't get around and you don't get to meet people. And I'm not a VC. So, I kind of do my investing for myself and stuff like that. I don't network aggressively, all that stuff. So, which is why I find social media platforms very helpful. So I said, fine, don't have LinkedIn. Let me see what happens on Twitter. So that was very encouraging. And then this entire thing about WhiteHat Jr. started coming in. So it's not like I don't criticize Byju's either on LinkedIn. I'm an equal opportunity critic, let me put it that way. So I also criticized WhiteHat Jr. What is the ideal response? What would a responsible company do to criticize them? They would get back to you and say, please tell us what your objection is. What are we doing wrong? How can we fix the problem? I think their silence itself speaks volumes about their approach towards criticism. What do we care about you guys? We've raised enough money. None of this matters. Who the hell are you to be telling us this? We've raised so much. You're just a stupid doctor or a stupid angel investor. Why do we need to listen to you? Stuff like that. So a lot of arrogance, a lot of hubris, a lot of, we really don't care about what you want to say. And so much of it started coming out. And I'll give full marks to Pradeep Poonia here. Because let's be honest, my technical skills are fairly limited. In the sense, I would see what other people have reported. I would see people would reach out to me and send me emails. I would see what's there on consumer complaints. And these were legit, well-documented complaints about, what was happening at various different levels. Pradeep did that and documented it even further. And that's when the pattern started getting established. And then one fine day, they sent this notice to Pradeep. So I told Pradeep, why are you worrying? What can they do to you? And then the next day, they send a notice to me saying, so I think their entire pattern is rather than be respectful and accept the fact that when people are saying things, there is a grain of truth. That's why. What do I have against Byju or WhiteHat Jr.? I don't compete with them. They're becoming rich doesn't make me any poorer. In fact, if they do well, I will do better. And people don't seem to understand this. If these guys get an exit, which means everyone in the startup ecosystem will become richer. There's a lot of herd mentality. It's when Flipkart got its exit to Walmart, everyone wanted to get into the Indian startup ecosystem space. And it's still a very small space. Once you have one success stories, then that multiplies. So I'd be very happy. Because then once you have edutech becoming a winner, everyone will pile on to the edutech space. So, rising tide lifts all boats. And it's a huge market. It's not like Byju is going to capture all of it. And neither is WhiteHat Jr. So it's actually in my best interest. That's the reason why other investors also keep quiet. Because they don't want to piss off the investors who are existing investors, and these are large investors. They don't want to say anything about them because then they won't let you partner with them on the next deal. So no one wants to be politically incorrect in this space. So I think that's, again, a bit of an issue. So I was fairly frank and open and stuff. So then they slapped me with the suit. Now, I'm a big boy.
They slapped you with a lawsuit and specifically claimed that you were defaming them on Twitter, and also that you were doing this so that you could give a boost to one of your portfolio startups, which is Evobi Automations, right? Which is also an edtech startup.
Yes, like I said before, that's the kind of thinking a lawyer will draft, someone who's clueless about how the startup system works, and then will find 50 reasons for motivation in inverted commas. But, when you think about second order thinking, that's actually exactly the opposite of what I would do. I would say, great, let these guys get an exit, let them make a lot of money, and then all edutech startups will, will get most favored status. So I think a lot of that, and typically when they slap you with it, I think this was 600, 700 pages, and hey, you've got to appear in court the next day. So it's very one-sided thing in the beginning. But we will have our day in the sun. And I have a lot of respect for the Indian judicial system, so that the first hearing really you don't get the opportunity because you're not prepared, you don't know what they're going to say. So you're pretty much on the defensive. But what did the judge say? All the judge said is, these are the following tweets. I think there were 10 or 12 removed them. Her major objection was you're using unparliamentary language. You're using words like cheat and scam and stuff like that, which I think when we get a chance to say what we do, we will prove that actually that's what they're doing. What amazes me is this, in their own affidavit, the CEO of WhiteHat Jr. acknowledges the fact that he's using this word very kindly, it's a euphemism, imaginary children like Wolf Gupta. What's an imaginary child? It's a lie, however you put on it. So effectively you're saying in a court, yes, I lied. So why did you lie? You lied because you wanted to make more money. That's the only reason anyone lies, because you created a fictional character. And then you sold that story. You got celebrities to endorse it. You sold that story to parents who would then fall into your trap. And then you're effectively, it's a bit like it's worse than the pot calling the kettle black. Here you are telling lies. So anyway, like I said before, then we'll have a chance to put in our written submission. We'll see.
Yeah, just touching again on, you were mentioning Wolf Gupta. For those who are like sort of uninformed, what exactly is going on? Who is Wolf Gupta, and what's the situation over there?
So I think the one thing they specialize in, I think if I'm not making a mistake, he's also an author, the CEO of WhiteHat Jr, Karan Bajaj. So maybe he has an active imagination. I don't know who created Wolf Gupta. I've never heard of any kid in India or anywhere in the world being named Wolf in any case. So they created this kid, and every ad would say 12 crores, he's on 14 crores, he's gone to Google and got this salary and stuff. So the thing is, they would just mindlessly create these ads. I don't even know there was any adult supervision. So they said anything they felt like. And then if you actually see the pattern, you will realize that every month the name remains the same, but the ad changes. Then they came up with another kid called Chintu, for example. So yeah, I think you should actually do this search. Who is Wolf Gupta? And you'll find out for yourself. There is no one called Wolf Gupta. But I mean, I'm sure he must be there in someone's brain, so someone's created out. So now they've cleaned up their act. So they're effectively saying, yes, we deserve a slap on our wrist. We were bad boys because we created this imaginary character. Yes, we did a lot of bad things, but now we've improved. We will not make these mistakes again. And bygones be bygones, and let's move on. And I think none of that makes sense. You can't bury all these skeletons in your cupboard just because that's convenient for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can say that, we're cleaning up our act, but at the same time, you're still going to be going to the courthouse. I don't know if it's happening online, if it's just like a video conversation, or if you actually have to go in person, but they're still suing you for $1.9 million, which is 14 crore rupees. So it doesn't look like they're backing off, right? They're actually sort of doubling down on this.
Which actually, again, makes no sense to me, because sensible legal advice would, I think, have most surely told them something else. Because what have they ended up doing? They've actually ended up washing their dirty linen in public. Because now we're going to point out all these ads. Now, you can lie as much as you like, and you can say whatever you want anywhere else, but you can't lie in a high court. And if you're caught in your lies, you're going to start ending up paying a price. So I think multiple things are happening. Let me give you some examples. I think once all this is now coming out in public, and there are so many coders and programmers who actually hate the fact that these guys are making irresponsible claims, like, you can get a 6-year-old child to code and create an app, and in 70 lessons, we will teach you to become an entrepreneur, we will teach you space tech, and all kinds of tall claims. I mean, sometimes you don't know whether to laugh or to cry when you hear these things. It's like, why do you want to go to IIT, you idiots? Just do a WhiteHat Jr course and, Google will employ you. So there must be something wrong with you. And imagine someone who spent time and energy learning Python and stuff like that is effectively saying, what? You're dissing me. It's the equivalent of saying you're stupid to go to a doctor who's done his MD and spent 8.5 years of his life. Why don't you just go to a quack who knows how to give you injections? And, he will get you as well. So effectively, you're demeaning the entire profession of coding and programming. I must tell you, I'm a big believer that kids need to learn. That's the reason why I invest in edtech startups. There's a right way and a wrong way. And making false promises, spoon feeding them, providing shortcuts and stuff is the wrong way. And it doesn't help at all, because you're actually making the kids dependent. What you want kids is to become self-learners. You don't just want to teach them what to learn. It's not like an empty vessel which needs to be filled with knowledge. You want to teach them how to figure out stuff for themselves, because that's what they're going to have to do. And that's what the internet is great for. Hey, figure this out, come back and show me. And that's why I admire Khan Academy. And there's so many of these free resources. And one of the things which, so I think it's great. You offer the one-on-one coaching. So what did they do? They identified two things. Hey, that kids, coding and programming is becoming aspirational. Fair enough. And that kids will often need handholding, and one-on-one tuitions is great. So I think that's fine. But there's a line. What's happened is you've crossed the line. And you've crossed the line and you started telling lies and making false promises and stuff. And I think that's not okay. The harm with telling lies is this causes a lot of harm to parents. They will not trust any startup edutech. And effectively, you're crowding out all the good guys. Because there are lots of edutechs which are social impact entrepreneurs who are doing it because their heart is in the right place, who care about kids, who are actually putting purpose before profits. But when you have people who are spending so much money on Google ads, Facebook ads, celebrity ads, brand endorsers, these guys just don't have a chance. Even when they go and pitch, people will ask them, "Lekin WhiteHat Jr. hai, ya Byju's hai," because there's name recall and stuff. So they've mastered the art of misselling. They do that exceptionally well, and they've raised so much money. So at some point, you also need to feel sorry for them. Why are they behaving like this? Because I don't think they must have that intention of, let's take parents for a ride. I always assume positive intent for anyone. I don't think people go out doing things with the intent of, taking people for a ride. And I think what's happened is there's a lot of investor pressure. There's, hey, you need to IPO in the next year. If you need to IPO, you need to show so many years of profitability. Your numbers need to be good enough, all kinds of things. And therefore, you need to massage your numbers. You need to show you have so much revenue. I think that's what's happening. And I think a lot of will come tumbling out, whether you like it or not. And I think there are multiple reasons why that's going to happen. If there's just so much public outcry about this, at some point, some whistleblower within the company is going to say, yes, this is exactly what's happened. Because people in the company also have a conscience. A lot of them will say, a lot of them can't even stick this thing. So the good guys will say, I don't want to continue working here. But there aren't enough people with that courage. So I think that's one thing. The other thing which is going to happen is all the celebrity endorsers. People say, fine, here's your checks. We have all these celebrity brand ambassadors who sign on, who have a lot of clout, especially for lower income parents. You see all these faces, say, wow, if Shah Rukh Khan says this is good or Madhuri Dixit, it must be good. And they can sign saying we didn't know any better, but the Indian laws changed. And now it says that if a celebrity endorser endorses a brand, and then that brand made false claims in its ads, like WhiteHat Jr. does, then that celebrity endorser also gets into trouble.
Wow.
So I think someone's going to go after these celebrity endorsers at some point. Very logical. They have deep pockets, so they can afford to pay. And then I think these celebrity endorsers will stop saying, why should I take a risk? Why do I want my name to be dragged in the mud because of these guys? So I think that's some of the knock-on effects which are going to happen because of the fact they sued us. Why do people sue others? I think the reason they sued Pradeep and me is they felt they used this as a bullying, intimidatory tactic. They felt we would get scared, we would roll over and say, I'm very sorry, please forgive us. We were bad boys, we will shut up, we will remove all our tweets and we will tell the world what good guys you are. They didn't expect us to fight back. And much to their dismay, we are fighting back. So that's caused the problem. There's so much public support because it's not like we're lying. What we are doing is actually saying the truth. And that's why this has happened at so many multiple levels. I think the other thing which is going to happen is that the reason why they actually Byju's bought WhiteHat Jr., they want to go to the US. Now, the US is not so kind to consumer fraud. They have a Federal Trade Commission which treats lies in advertisements as consumer fraud. And trust me, they sue you for lots of money, which even $1 billion is missing. Lawsuits. And you have lawyers who will do stuff on contingency fees. So effectively, if I were a lawyer, you've got this case handed to you on a platter. You've got this CEO acknowledging in an Indian High Court that we created a fictitious kid and we lied in our advertisement to our parents to make money of them. What are they going to say? And you've done that. And then, so Indian courts, different cup of tea. The federal trade, and they don't like US citizens being cheated. And they definitely don't like US citizens being cheated by Indian startups. So I think you've not heard the end of this. This is just going to keep on growing up. So I think what's happened is Byju's has swallowed a hot potato. Part of the reason, again, is because they did that acquisition during this lockdown. I don't think their due diligence was perhaps, because it must have all been done on a Zoom call is my guess. Hey, what do I know? I'm just a stupid investor. I don't understand millions of dollars and stuff like that. I think they got paid $300 million. So we'll see. A lot of this stuff will come out. I'm pretty sure about that.
This is what I heard, though, that the acquisition was actually made because they're trying to expand really quickly during this whole pandemic thing, because people are at home and they want to get things done kind of before school's back in session and kids are actually going to physical schools. Making sure that people are sticking around and they're still using their product. So they're acquiring companies like WhiteHat Jr. So we were talking. You had mentioned a little bit earlier about this thing with LinkedIn that you've filed a writ petition against LinkedIn. So tell me a little bit about that. Just moving away from WhiteHat Jr. for a second and focus on LinkedIn, and you basically having your account removed from the platform.
Yeah, that hurt. Trust me about that. And at some point, whenever something like this happens, you have a standard. The first response is denial. How can they do this to me? I'm sure they're reasonable people. I will tell them. Some of it is an anger. Why are they doing this to me? Then some of it is the bargaining phase. Okay, fine. I promise to be a good boy. Don't do this to me. But effectively, they just, refuse to listen. So we said, how do we escalate this? Now, trust me, court cases aren't any fun, especially with the Indian judicial system, which moves slowly and is extremely expensive and takes time. And it's not like I started my account on LinkedIn to be a crusader or to take Byju's down or to take WhiteHat Jr. down. This is not stuff which I did. I did it because I care about the next generation. I want them to make sure that, in one sense, India has always been the land of the future. In the sense, you had a demographic sweet spot, you're a democracy. There is so much promise. When does that potential actually get fulfilled? And the tragedy is it still hasn't. So you have all these colleges, universities, which turn out engineers who are completely unemployable because they don't have the right skill set. So I care that if you educate them properly and help them to think for themselves, they'll be able to do a good job. So this is important. And then I said, I think it's unfair what LinkedIn did, and therefore I need to do something about it. So what is my redressal? So I said, we need to take them to court. This is what we did. We filed a writ petition in Mumbai High Court saying you have no business censoring my right to free speech on your platform. So here's the response we got. So we had 3 dates so far. And again, it's, you send they reply, then you send a rejoinder, you get another date, which takes 15 days, then you reply, then you have argument. So this is something which is going to continue. But you know what the first response was? You can't sue us. We are not answerable to the Indian judiciary. In one sense, they cocked a snoot at the Indian judiciary, saying, we don't care about the Indian judiciary. We are linked in India. We're just the marketing arm of LinkedIn USA. If you want to sue anyone, go sue LinkedIn and do that in California. You can't sue us in India, which caused me major, caused me major heartburn. You have so many users in India. You earn revenue from Indian advertisers. You hire people in India. You make money off Indians. And then you have the guts to say, we're not going to answer to the Indian judicial system. So that's the first line of defense, which, and where do you expect me to go? So I can't file here, though I'm an Indian citizen, though I signed on in India. So this is what I don't like. It's all this legal jugglery and manipulation. And I know corporates are extremely good at doing that stuff, evading the issue, burying you under so many lawsuits that you just don't have the energy to fight. Lots of films about that and, stuff like that. So I didn't set out to be a crusader, but I'm not going to roll over and die. I'm not going to say, okay, fine, have your way, or what can I do? Microsoft is a multi-billion-dollar giant or whatever. It's fair enough who you are. I have faith in the Indian judiciary that the voice of the Indian citizen will be heard. And free speech in an Indian democracy is extremely important. We are not China. And therefore, to suppress our right is just not acceptable. So, and the trouble is, since LinkedIn is no longer answering to me, we'd much rather answer to the Mumbai High Court judge, and let's see what they have to say. So at some point, some of that is going to come out. And I always tell people, I'm no longer fighting for myself. This has gone way beyond that. I'm fighting for a particular cause, a particular principle, and this is not something which just affects me. It's going to affect other people. So 2 things can happen, quite frankly. I give up. I don't want all this additional stress. I'm happy seeing patients. My patients are happy with me. I always tell people, best job in the world. You get women pregnant and their husbands pay you to do that for them. No, kidding apart, but there's so much joy and gratification when an infertile couple has a baby. You change their life completely. So I could very well say and do that. What signal would I be giving to other people? That when these big boys come after you, shut up, keep quiet. It's dangerous to say what you do, because if you do, they will come after you. So if I allow myself to be bullied, that's the lesson which other people are going to draw. And I definitely don't want that. And rather, I want the lesson to be is that we will not allow ourselves to be bullied. Under other conditions, better conditions perhaps, when the world was a nicer place, you would have investigative journalists from mainstream media doing all this digging and finding out and coming to the truth. Unfortunately, that's gone away completely. But fortunately, you now have a lot of citizens I won't call them citizen journalists, but in people who have a mind of their own, people who are far more expert than journalists. And it's the power of numbers now. So people are coming up with all sorts of interesting observations. Did you know this? This is what they do. This is how they're doing this. So I think it's going to be interesting. And don't forget, there are billion-dollar Chinese companies which are actually offering one-on-one tutoring for, let's say, teaching English, for example. And they're doing it extremely successfully. There is no outcry against them. They're not misusing stuff. And I think these guys have got away with it because in that sense, I think perhaps Indians are much more chalta hai, accepting attitude, whatever. I don't think American consumers are going to be all that willing. So I think these guys are effectively going to end up opening a can of worms. Their quality standards are going to dramatically improve. The moment you improve quality standards for teachers, the number of teachers you're going to hire is going to dramatically go down. Right now, they're effectively any warm body, literally. All you need to do for WhiteHat juniors, you need to be a woman. They won't hire you, no matter how smart you are. You need to be a woman because their whole thing is we empower women by hiring only women teachers. Anyway.
I didn't read this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess the women are more docile and they're less likely to push back and less likely to be whistleblowers and stuff like that, whatever the reason may be. Or maybe it's just public posturing. So, we only hire women and it doesn't matter. We will not check your resume. We don't care if you know coding. It's literally a one thing and, hey, if you can this thing, we will teach you. We will teach you how to code, even though you don't know how to code. Because guess what? You're just going to teach kids. Kids are idiots. They don't understand anything. They don't understand anything. So you do whatever you like. You just follow this recipe cookbook which we're giving you mindlessly, and you call yourself a top kid coding expert, certified by WhiteHat Jr, created by alumni of IIT, IIM, Discovery. Literally, this is what they use. And it sounds very impressive on a certificate. So you have all these kids posing with their certificates and showing what they do. And it's all kinds of, your kid will create an app. Try actually looking for any of these apps, they just don't exist.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there any sort of tangible results here? Are there kids that have actually gone? It's too early to tell, right? It's such a small, they've only been around for a little while, but still you would expect to see kind of something tangible, or some of their customers who are defending the company saying, look, I was, taught by WhiteHat Jr. and look at me, right? Now I'm, creating this app. But as far from what I've heard from you and what I've heard from Pradeep and some other people as well, is that hasn't materialized.
The only people who put positive reviews about WhiteHat Jr. are WhiteHat Jr. employees. The WhiteHat Jr. CTO, who says how his kid benefited by taking 71 lessons, and all the WhiteHat ORM team. The online reputation management team is extremely effective at pulling down criticism and doing all these reviews. But even the reviews, they're so badly done. Riddled with English errors, and they all copy and paste. They're effectively just ending up making food. But the thing is, if you at first blush, if you don't bother to peel the onion, everything looks great. It's only when you start peeling and going down a little deeper, you realize that, the core is extremely hollow, to say the least. And I think that's what people are gradually realizing.
But most people don't do that peeling, right? That's the dangerous thing, that most people aren't going on Google and looking for, is this actually legitimate? Is it not, right? Are they actually trained teachers on this platform? Are they just being brought in the day before and saying, look, you just need to show them this tutorial online that isn't created by WhiteHat Jr. from some other company? It's an unfortunate situation. What do you think WhiteHat Jr., if you had to give them some advice on ways that they can improve or things that they can do better, the path that you actually think they should take, what would you say?
I would say, don't forget that the reason you entered this space, assuming your heart is in the right place, and I don't know enough about them to say that, is to actually give kids a better shot at a brighter future. If you use that as your north, about the money and the profits and the revenue and stuff, because profit should come because you're fulfilling a useful purpose, not the other way around. And I think they've lost sight of that. But honestly, I think maybe now they're so deeply mired. So I think the entrepreneurs, the founders don't even have that autonomy and the freedom. Because at some point when you have investors on your board, you're answerable to them, you've shown them a particular business plan, they're going to be breathing down your neck, asking for an exit. It becomes extremely hard. And then at some point you engage with your investors on a regular basis because, it's a game of musical chairs. Everyone wants a higher valuation. They need to show their LPs that, a company which we invested in when it was $2 billion worth, again, all vanity metrics, is now $10 billion worth. What does that really mean and stuff like that? No one really knows, but that's the game and that's the way people play. But it's only when you stop and you dig a little bit deeper. So I think in one sense, big wasted opportunity. The tragedy is this is played out multiple times. There was an institution called IIM, which was run by a fellow called Arindam Chaudhari, which offered MBA courses, which imploded because so many of his claims were false, and he would aggressively go after his critics and sue them left, right, and center to try to silence them. There's an even more colorful history. There was a company called TutorVista, which was an Indian startup, which was bought over by Pearson, which is supposed to be a fantastic success story based on the fact that they offered one-on-one tutoring to US students. After Pearson bought them, they realized they were sold a lemon. So they effectively had to this thing. So Byju then bought them from Pearson at 1/10 or whatever else. So I think, it's for some reason education seems to attract a lot of people who don't seem to care too much about making money the right way when there's just so much money to be made. What's the rush? Make your money, but, does it really, do you have to do it within 5 years? Do you have to tell people, and then this is part of the VC problem because VCs need to raise funds all the time. So, you've finished your fund number 3, you now need to raise fund number 4. You need to go back to the LPs. The first thing the LP is going to ask you is, show me your past performance. And then you've got to show them all these metrics. And then they're all buddies. Hey, why don't you buy my company at a 2x valuation? I'll buy a stake in your company at a 2x valuation. So the valuation for both our companies will bump up at some point. So we've seen how this plays out with Theranos. We've seen how this plays out with WeWork. You can fool lots of people lots of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time, I think. So, for example, for education, there was this famous company blew up called Educom. So there seems to be a history every 5 years, whether it is IIPM, whether it was Educom, whether it was TutorVista, and now it's these guys. So maybe people just have a short memory. I don't know what it is. Honestly, a lot of people criticize me. They said, you seem to be very good at identifying problems and shooting people down. What have you done about this? How are you solving the problem? And that's something which I need to point out, is that we are solving the problem with a slightly different route. I want to fund social impact entrepreneurs who aren't hungry necessarily just to make money. But the problem with these entrepreneurs is capital needs to be much more patient, which means they raise much less capital because they need to get money from their customers. The investors aren't going to sign, large checks. So therefore, it takes them much longer to reach that exponential curve, which means they will remain underground for maybe 4 years or 5 years. But I think once they reach, because their base is so solid, you will see a lot of interesting growth. So that's one set which we're doing. Again, no success stories I can talk of, but I'm hoping that, this will be proven right. And I also think what we're trying to do is give grants to NGOs and, people who, and show them, look, there's a lot of good stuff. For example, Khan Academy is an excellent example. There's lots of great content on YouTube, for example. So one of the guys I've funded, who I think is brilliant, he's created a website called learnwithyoutube.org. So what you've done is you can search and effectively it will pull out all the kid-friendly YouTube videos on that particular topic. So you don't get distracted by all the other rubbish on YouTube. It's only kid-friendly stuff. And then you get to pick and choose. So no one is telling you you've got to listen to this particular teacher teaching this particular way. The whole point, honestly, I believe, is you need to offer kids a buffet. Every kid has to be individualized, personalized learning. Let the kid learn at his own pace. So give him 10 videos and, whichever one he wants in his language, in his native. Why should he be forced to learn everything in English? I think that's ridiculous and disrespectful, quite frankly.
So in closing, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would like to say directly to the startup ecosystem?
Yes, I think part of the problem is that a lot of the press or the general stories which are featured in the media are about these outliers, these success stories, which are basically vanity metrics like valuation and how much money they've raised. And I honestly think, I tell entrepreneurs, that's a distraction. Your job is not to keep your investor happy. Your job is to keep your customer happy. Your customers are your best investors. Your investors should come running after you saying, hey, please take my money. And the money should be used primarily to help you to grow faster than being able to grow otherwise. And just because there are a few bad boys in the ecosystem, don't get distracted, don't get misled. It is possible to grow organically, sustainably, and scalably without selling your soul. You can do things ethically. Yes, it takes longer. You need to be much more patient. You need to plod. But, you have the rest of your life ahead of you. And you actually want to create a success story which you'll be proud to tell your children and your grandchildren.
Definitely. Perfect. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Dr. Malpani, for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and your experience. And I wish you all the best with this court battle.
Okay, thank you so much. I need all the luck. Guys with lots of money, no question about that.
Definitely. Actually, you're 2 court battles. So yeah, you've got a lot on your plate. But thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.